Oh,
Hi, Niccolo. How are you?
hi, I'm great, thanks.
Hi, good. So, Niccolo Casas, it's such a pleasure to welcome you to the MetaArt Club as part of our 35 curated international artists. And your work really speaks for itself. Although I am going to be asking you to speak for yourself in a minute. And I just wanted to really just ask you to introduce yourself, because you are a man of many talents and an artist of many talents. So how would you introduce yourself in a nutshell?
Thank you very much for this introduction. It's yeah, I'm an architect and an artist. I'm a multidisciplinary expert. I work between disciplines. I've been working in architecture, art, of course, but I've been working on a lot in haute couture as well, fashion tech, automotive design, science, and medicine. I, I run a multidisciplinary practice for creativity and innovation that try to combine several fields of specialization, so to create innovation in different fields. And art is a really important part of what I do, exactly because it allows me to investigate aesthetics and theory as well, without the concern of the physical construct of the tangible construct as well. I am also a researcher. I'm a PhD candidate at the Bartlett UCL in London. And I teach as well. I'm a visiting professor at RISD, Rhode Island School of Design. So the research and teaching, so the academia in general, is part of my background and of my interest as well. And so yeah, that's more or less what I do.
Thank you for that incredibly well articulated overview of all the things that you pack into your practice, because there is a lot. So I'd love to unpack some of that with you today. And also really, I guess, focus on, how you began your journey into NFTs, because it's obviously been a very, I wouldn't say elaborate, but it's been a very considered one. And being an architect, as well as a professor, as well as you have so many strings to your bow as an academician, as well as a practicing artist, as well as an architect. And it's really a privilege to speak to you today. So I just wanted to find out, how did you transition to the point where we're having this conversation today about your NFT work for the MetaArt Club?
First of all, I'm a beginner, but I'm super excited about this opportunity and the fact of investigating and doing research and trying to apply my work to the NFT environment. There are a lot of reasons why I'm interested in these new fields of that has enormous potentialities for art and creativity, expression, and investigation. First of all, it's my work is really connected and related and influenced as well by new technologies. I started working in a multidisciplinary way thanks to 3D printing technology and additive manufacturing, which is really the foundation probably of my work. And thanks to additive manufacturing, I had the possibility to start collaborating with a lot of artists like Iris van Herpen in the fashion industry, haute couture industry, and Anouk Wipret in the fashion tech industry as well, and so on. the other thing that was really important at the beginning of my career was the effect of the empowering and the more the moment in which internet allow to send big files, big data files. So again, a technological shift, because it allowed me to collaborate and to work basically with anyone, anywhere in the world. So I think that NFT can be a new beginning, because it is a new technology and it creates a totally new environment for creatives, for artists, for anyone actually, because it's basically all the industries are starting entering the NFT worlds. Also, art is part of my background, of my interest, and I'm connected to a lot of artists that are starting investigating and working within this field. So I started reading about and getting interested more or less 6-7 months ago. So it's again, I'm a beginner, and in the moment I was contacted by the art club. I was the MetaArt club. I was totally thrilled, because it was a great opportunity to start something new, but with a new approach, because you have an alternative approach to NFT, which I found really interesting. And so it's I'm a beginner in a new beginning moment. So everything is really exciting.
Yeah, that's incredible, Niccolo. And you're so humble to say that you're a beginner. I think what's so interesting and exciting about the NFT space is there are so many artists who have gotten their big kind of moment through NFTs, and others who were not practicing artists before, but may have been either architects purely or graphic designers, and have just been kind of quietly practicing their art. And this is the first time that they've brought it to the public arena because of NFTs. So it's really interesting how, there's quite a few of you within our group of 35 launch artists who have previously been architects or trained in architecture. But for you, I'm really so interested in your own practice, because obviously you have a digital background. I mean, the subject of your research for the Bartlett School of Architecture, if I may just touch on that, is digital decadence, the aesthetics of ugliness in the age of architecture. And one of the interesting things I think that we're finding, not just within the MetaArt Club's curated artists, but also just within this space in general, that there seem to be so many different styles of work, and it's kind of challenging the way that we perceive the question, what is art?
Yeah, I totally agree. The thing is that every new technology and every new discovery is actually challenging human culture, and as a consequence, or in a connected way, human expression and human communication. And art is probably the highest and the most interesting form of human communication. It's nice that you mentioned my PhD research that concern decadence, and concern also other things, but it started with my interest in decadence. And what is interesting, since you mentioned it, is that the decadent movement and the decadent aesthetics started in a moment of scientific discovery. So the moment where entropy was discovered, and this created a sort of pessimistic mood in the time that was around the end of the 19th century. But this was this idea of things crumbling, things decaying, but actually this decaying process leading to a transformation, and so to the possibility to create and to have something new. So again, what was interesting in that moment was that a scientific discovery influenced the social mood of that time, the artistic mood of the time, in a sort of pessimistic way that actually brought to an idea of renew, of the possibility to reborn in a new way, sort of a new renaissance. And I think that there are common point with the time we are living, because of course there are all the problems related to sustainability, and then there are the problem of pandemic. So human way of life is questioned, and actually digital tools are what in this moment are giving us the possibility to keep communicating, keep being in touch, keep expressing ourselves in a creative way. So, and NFT are like probably the newest or the youngest expression of this digital environment. So again, it's really interesting how a problem or a scientific discovery or a pandemic or that may question the way human beings live and act may actually give and bring in light new opportunities. And I think that we are currently living a really similar situation.
Yeah, that's a really interesting parallel, Niccolo, and one that I think is becoming a realization for many of us, and certainly for the artists that are in the NFT space. It does feel like there is this sea change happening. Now, I just want to track back to your own relationship with technology and the digital space, because this is something that is definitely not anathema to you. You know, you've been 3D printing. You worked with Iris van Herpen in 2016, if I'm not wrong with that. And you know, you created 3D printed magma dresses. So you're not a stranger to technology in any way, and yet you know you're very how can I say, self-effacing, in that you say you're new to this space, well, specifically NFTs. But I just want to understand, you know, how do you think NFTs are going to inform what you create across the disciplines that you're present in?
Yeah, you know, my work is digital. Even when it gets to the point of becoming physical, I work through digital fabrication. That could be 3D printing or CNC, computer-driven techniques, and so on. So my work is digital. And I've been working on haute couture with Iris van Herpen, and together we collaborated in probably 5 dresses and a few sculptures, one also for a few also for Dom Perignon, for example, and always employing digital tools, because what is there are many things why digital is important for creatives, for architects or artists. First of all, an aesthetic point of view, so the possibility to create new forms, new shapes, new patterns, but there is also another really important point, that's in the moment a field enter or is influenced by the digital realm, it gets more sustainable. It's not something that is evident at the beginning, but little by little goes in that direction. So why, for example, just by, since you were talking about Yildiz van Herpen, why we were interested and we are interested in digital design and digital fabrication, because digital tools can promote on-demand production. You can reduce waste, so you can produce only when it's needed. You can produce on mass customized pieces. That means they're specifically for you, so that you don't need to produce small, medium, large, or extra large dresses. It's made specifically for you. It's not something that I mean, in this moment, it's still expensive to produce. It's a little bit complex to produce. And we need new machine and better technologies. But in the moment you start this research, you start this path, you create a trend, you create a direction, and you also communicate a will, a desire. And I think that in this moment, for example, talking about the fashion industry is going in that direction. There are different ways to do it, but in the moment they are employing digital tools, they can become more sustainable. The same was with the music industry. In the moment you reduce the transportation fees, the vinyl also was super not sustainable. And in the moment you produce less, you actually become a little more sustainable. Okay, we all know that NFT now have a problem with sustainability, but it's so young technology, and I'm sure in the moment the art industry will become more virtual, more digital, and NFT, like for example that is coming now with Ethereum 2, are gonna change the way they calculate and the way they are basically processed. They're gonna influence or promote a change within the art industry, like the music industry went through. And the same is up, and a similar thing is happening in architecture as well, where we are starting fabricating using digital tools, assembling using robotic tools, designing using digital tools, and at least this is something that I truly believe, that in the moment the digitality is becoming part of the production or the distribution or the creation in a medium or longer time, it influences that field in a sustainable way. So that's why that's another reason why I'm interested in NFT. Okay, they are not sustainable now, but I think in a really short time they will change the art industry, giving, of course, more freedom and more possibility for young people to be exposed, create a totally new market and so on. But in a long path, I think that it's gonna also change in a sustainable way, reducing, cost of production and transportation and delivery and so on.
Yeah, that's really spot on, Niccolo. And I think also, from a kind of art zeitgeist standpoint, if you think about Paris, for example, at the turn of the 20th century, so the changeover from the 19th to the 20th century, and the way that artists were breaking away from the traditional practices of art to begin creating art in a way that was seen as not art, or it was radical, it was fast, the way that they created, it didn't take the time and adhere to the constructs and the rigid kind of practices of before, and that was seen as, at that time, as really a affront to the art establishment. In the same way, I think that NFTs now are still perhaps misunderstood, or it's a period of education, shall we say. And I think that the MetaArt Club, what we're trying to do, as you know, Niccolo, is to really bring in the curatorial element, and you know, and bring collectors who are established art collectors to, you know, a series of you know, a group of artists that maybe they wouldn't have naturally stumbled upon in their milieu of, you know, of art collecting. So I think it's this really interesting moment, and you've highlighted that really, really well. And yes, NFTs aren't necessarily the most eco-friendly in terms of the properties and the minting and all of that. But at the same time, yes, it's not moving massive pieces of art around the world with shipping. And, you know, I mean, it's one thing is not better than the other or worse than the other. I think right now, I think we can safely say that. So I wanted to ask you, you know, in your life, in your working practice, you know, you have academia, you're very prolific in terms of your collaborations as well, and you are also practicing your art. So do they coexist? How do they coexist, and how do you find the time to give to each part of your working practice and your art practice?
You know, I think there are moments where of the year probably where I'm particularly creative. I don't know why. You know, it's part of what I am, and I really have you know, a lot of ideas that I produce. I create digital sketches, digital 3D sketches, and so on, that are open, like they are objects. They could be then applied or translated into art, so becoming perhaps more abstract, or they have the potentiality to acquire some function, so become perhaps a furniture piece or an architectural piece, or perhaps being entangled with non-architectural, not design function, and become the basis of the foundation for a dress. So the thing is that when you are working in the digital world, and I think that's why I think, and I define myself more a creative, creative person than an architect, because architecture comes in a second moment when the objects that I create, that I have in mind, etc., acquire or modify itself, receiving functional properties. And but this again object could then be applied to different fields. And then there are moments of the year where I don't want to design. I really need to think more. And they are the moment of the year where I read a lot. I read a lot of philosophy. I study a lot, and this is really important for my academic path. And both are influencing each other. So my aesthetic research is influencing my theoretical background, let's say, and my theoretical studies are influencing my aesthetic output. Because in between theory and aesthetic, there is the process, you know, how you create, in which way you create. And the process is influenced by both theory, because it gives idea on how to produce things, but also from the aesthetic point of view, because the aesthetic create a direction for the process that you set up. So what I try, and I've been trying to reach, is a sort of consistency between the different paths that I'm trying to follow.
Yeah, that's really interesting, Niccolo, and thank you for making that parallel between your theoretical studies and your aesthetic output. That's yeah, very, very interesting. And I wanted to ask you, how did you cultivate your education as an artist? And it's a question about childhood as well.
It's as I was saying before, I think it's part of what I am. There are moments of the year where I have this sort of inner energy, inner pulsion, inner I don't know what, that is actually a sort of necessity to communicate. But I'm not a great speaker. I'm a maker. So the way I communicate is by producing aesthetical outputs. Let's say, could be drawing, could be digital objects, could be architectural ideas, and so on. But this is something that was before my educational, as you were saying, path. You know, when I was probably I started having this feel when I was a kid, you know, playing and drawing. But I became aware about this when I was a teenager in my secondary school. It's the moment where I start, you know, painting. That was my first approach to the visual communication. You know, it's at the time I really wanted to bring out these my ideas, my emotion, and so on, and painting was the technique I choose at the time. And then when I discovered digital tools, so Autodesk Maya was my first software for designing 3D, again, object animation and so on, and I knew that that was my media. So again, it's something that is in me. I cannot explain very well, but it's a sensation. It's an emotion that is inside, that grows at a certain point, wants to become something. And it can be, again, it's this object with infinite potentialities that then can become art or architecture or couture.
You're very lucky that you have those, you've created and cultivated those outlets for your artistic practice and for your inner artist to actually have to be able to channel that in 3 different ways, I think is quite incredible.
Thanks.
Did you grow up surrounded by art? And I know you are from Florence. Is that right, Niccolo?
Yeah, I grew up in Florence, and but that's a strange thing. I think it's something that happened to probably everybody. You know, since I grew up in Florence, I sort of gave for granted what I had outside. You know, it's there was, you know, my natural environment. I knew those shapes, those forms, those buildings, and so on. And at the time, what I wanted was actually to escape, you know, that reality, and actually perhaps criticize or being different. I was really interested in you know, in art at the time, but I was fascinated by you know, American art, what was happening in New York, Los Angeles, and so on. And is in the moment I left Florence and I moved to Brussels, then London, and so on, that while coming back to Florence, I actually discovered how much innovation, elegance, and quality was is in that city. And I love Florence like now, like probably I've never loved before, because let's say I escaped from Florence and I returned to it. And it's probably a process that a lot of people do with their family, and Florence is part of my family in terms of environment. It's this place where I grew up that I had to leave, and now when I'm when I have the chance to come back is always an enormous pleasure, and it's so yeah, I had to criticize and then come back.
I think perhaps that's part of being human as well, that we want to rebel and define ourselves in a different way from what we grew up surrounded by, because we see that as, you know, part of the traditional, and we want to break out of the confines of that. So I think it's interesting the way that you define that. And I wanted to ask you, Niccolo, you know, how would you characterize your art? You know, you've moved into this NFT medium, but you've obviously been practicing art since secondary school, as you said. You've mentioned bringing elegance to the art form. Can you expand on that?
There is, I mean, I've been interested during the last probably 10 or 15 years in complexity, in chaos theories, and in fractal shapes and fractal geometries, and in how, you know, simple rules can repeated generate complex, natural, from my perspective, beautiful, enchanting shapes. And you can find those investigation in my works. It's you know, I could employ the digital tools, because the digital tools are like the perfect tools to actually simulate those shapes. It's really hard to generate the same complexity by hand. You can do it, but it's the digital tools are like, you know, the perfect tools, especially because it's you are working in a digital space, so everything can become really small or really big, just depending on the way you zoom and you calculate and you process your geometry calculation. And at a certain point, I wanted to balance those complex shapes with more minimal shapes. So my work as a creative, because actually the same research is happening. I'm trying to apply the same principle and the same research in my theoretical work, in my architectural work, and in my artistic work as well, is trying to find a balance. That's why I use a sort of term elegance, because elegance is really abstract term. And to me, elegance is about sort of equilibrium, about, again, a balance. And in my way, in the way I try to reach this sort of elegance is by creating a coexistence between minimal shapes that are like primitive cubes, tubes, spheres, and really complex one. And again, I'm interested in fractal shapes, so I generate and create those fractal geometries with those fractal organization, and I combine it in a non-mediated way, really by juxtaposition, by combination with minimal surfaces. And the other thing that I really interested are like the non-mediated operation. They're like booleans. When you cut, you combine, you overlap. So they are really, really rigid process. They're not soft. But if you find, again, a good balance between the way you combine, or the way you cut, or the way you extrude, there are moments of almost, because it's always a research, perfect equilibrium that I found particularly beautiful.
Yeah, and your work almost, well, you said almost, but your work to me conveys the perfection in nature, but obviously it's in this kind of infinite visual possibilities. And it also echoes, for me, and I think for some viewers as well, this kind of science fiction themes visually in your work without trying to be that. Are you consciously referenced by science fiction, or is this something that just comes up in an organic way through the geometry that you've said, and the fractal shapes are just that's just a natural kind of extension of your visual language?
That's I think it's interesting, because in my mind, this sort of coexistence or equilibrium between fractal natural shapes and more geometric primitive shapes are actually sort of balance also between human expression and natural expression. Natural tend to create not regular shapes, complex shapes, fractured shapes, and it's really rare. It happens, but it's rare that natural produce continuous linear forms. And as human beings, we are exactly the opposite. We tend to produce linear elements, a table, a chair, and so on. A house very often are like regular shapes. It's more complex for us to create complexity. Complexity is very often actually related to the artistic expression of human behavior, because and because we learn from nature, and we reproduce. So this sort of coexistence for me between a complex and simple shapes is also a metaphor of the combination of the coexistence between nature and human lives. And in the moment you mentioned science fiction, I think that science fiction very often investigates or try to question exactly that relation, the relation between what we are and what we could be, or what we are gonna be, and what natural is, and what could be and what will be. So I think that probably in the art is always, and creativity is always try to emulate or to create something that is not yet there, it's in another place, in another time. So in the moment, art for me is between this coexistence. I agree with you that could be linked or connected or analogically transferred to a sort of science fiction environment in terms of how it may look and how it may be perceived.
Yes, and your work conveys another dimension. I mean, that has many different meanings, but I'm just in a general way, it conveys that otherworldliness, which is really, really beautiful. Sorry, Niccolo.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, hopefully you're right, since it's something that I'm interested in. I've been always really fascinated by all artists that attempt to, you know, redefine or break the surface, the art surface. Back in time, Fontana and Bourret, but now Vils is one of the artists that I love, Christo and Jean-Claude as well. The effect of breaking this relation between two-dimensionality and three-dimensionality to create a link that connects the surface to something that cannot be in the surface. And I think that's why the digital realm and NFT are interesting for me now, because exactly they give the possibility to artists to break the screen, break the surface, to create a three-dimensional, or to make people live and experience new three-dimensional environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that note, I have a question regarding, you know, how you create in 2D and 3D, Niccolo. Are you hands-on, or do you work with collaborators who help inform parts of the technology that you use, or, you know, how does that process work for you?
I employ lots of different softwares. Generally, I'm interested in of course, software that generate fractal shapes, and also software that are employed within the special effects industry. So again, you're right about this link with science fiction. There are software that are employed for creating special effects, animation, and so on, that I then employ to create these let's say objects with potentialities. And but of course, then collaboration and multidisciplinary confrontation and influence is at the core of my approach to the creative profession. So exactly in the same way, I try to combine natural with geometric shapes, so two different kind of patterns, two different lexicons. I'm interested in this combination between different profession, different knowledges, different approaches, different vision. That's why I really love to collaborate with people from other fields. And that's why I started collaborating with, again, fashion industry, fashion tech industry, the science, it's not an industry, but the science field, and so on. And I really love the tension that at a certain point can generate something that is completely new, in the sense that it doesn't belong one of the previous of the combined fields.
Yeah, that's incredible. And it's really amazing to hear you articulate that, because it's a rare thing that you're doing.
Thank you.
You came into NFTs, if I'm not mistaken, I read somewhere that you came into NFTs, Niccolo, through the work of Grimes.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's I love her. I love her music, and I knew about her the first time actually through Iris Van Herpen, because she made a dress. I mean, she made a lot of dress for Grimes during the time, but she made a dress while in the moment I was beginning my collaboration with Iris Van Herpen. So I know her, and I'm following her via. And I love her music and following her art expression within different social platforms and so on. I think that she's amazing, and probably that was the moment I first knew about NFT and the possibility to create design in a new environment, in a new creative environment, in a new digital platform. It was, and I started reading about this and studying, because again, I think that it's part of the way I am. I want to be prepared. I want to know about how things work before, starting. And the NFT are not easy. The process is a little bit complex. It's based on new technologies, but everything that is new, it's really fascinating and opening unexpected ways. Why I think that all innovation is really interesting, because you think that a new technology is gonna be applied in a way, in a field, and then it actually creates a completely unexpected path. And that's why I think technology is a form of art, because actually it generates new expressions.
That's amazing. I love that. Technology is a form of art. On that note, Niccolo, crypto, being part of this whole brave new world, I suppose, has that been part of the journey of understanding as you've delved into NFTs, or do you see that as quite separate?
I think they're connected in a way. I mean, it's a series of digital fields and technologies. They're actually connected and influenced each other. But despite the separation or the connection, what I really interested is in the possibilities of artistic expression that are actually connected with them, and the possibility to redefine in a completely new and unexpected way entire fields. Now everybody knows about art, and within NFT and digital and new digital spaces. But it's not only about art now. The fashion industry is entering this world. Basically all industry are starting understanding and seeing the potentialities of these technologies, exactly in the same way it happened when internet started, when internet became fast. In the moment additive technologies was invented, and the moment was in which digital design tool were created. I think that what is really interesting to me is how technology in all different ways can actually reinvent in new and unexpected ways all fields of creations.
And as an extension of that, Niccolo, would you say that we are in the midst of a digital renaissance? And I want to just draw parallels between the original Renaissance and the Medici, and the way that they were more than art patrons, that they cultivated these close relationships with artists and really informed their work across many different sectors, not just with the pure artists. But do you think we're seeing a similar moment in human history now, where, for example, NFT artists have this unprecedented direct contact with their collectors, and their collectors can open up dialogues that may inform the work?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. It's all form of Renaissance. Of course, I'm from Florence, so but I would expand that all forms of Renaissance starts and begin with the crisis. And as I was saying at the beginning of our chat, I think that we are living and experience a social, ecological, but also a pandemic crisis in the moment at the same time. And of course, this is impacting the way we live and all our cultural and behavioral foundation. And this actually is generating a reaction. So that's why we talk about the Renaissance. Renaissance means, you know, burning again. It's about a new life, but it's also about a reaction. And exactly how it was for the Renaissance in Florence, there are very often our Renaissance starts with art. And I think in this moment, technology together with art are guiding or showing a direction of how a new renovated way of life could be in a short term.
Thank you, Niccolo. Is there any artist that you're looking at in the NFT space and thinking that their work speaks to you?
You know, I'm really interested in graffiti art. I think it's because of this my living in the sort of threshold between architecture and art, and graffiti is something that is, at least in my interpretation, is both art and architecture, because actually changed the surface of building. So it changed the aesthetic of building. It actually wraps around the building, but it also gives buildings a new aesthetics. So to me, it's architecture. But of course, it's art as well. So all graffiti artists are starting actually creating their NFT collection. So again, probably my favorite in this moment is Fields. But you know, all graffiti artists in this moment are little by little entering the NFT. Shepard Fairey is another one that I really admire, and I think that's for what concerns my taste. I'm really interested in that combination, especially since we were talking about the surface. I'm interested in the way they're gonna employ the possibilities of not actually having a building as a frame of the work, but a digital space. And I think this is gonna give graffiti artists new approaches, new references, and new lexicons, because they have to reinvent, and also they have to question their work as well, because graffiti is about, again, going outside, express yourself, and communicate something by, you know, employing the city around. But now that's NFT are opening to the digital world, and it can't be translated in a straight way. So I think that there are really interesting new approaches, like, you know, Banksy destroying his art, Vils doing a similar approach. So it's really interesting how they are reinventing their artistic process while confronting themselves to a new environment that is not physical, but it's digital.
Do you think, Niccolo, that in 5 years' time, we're going to be having a very different conversation? I mean, you're very tuned in and educated about the technology that can inform your work. Do you think that there is going to be new technology that is informing the way that artists work, as you've outlined, or what would you like to see?
That's really interesting, because 5 years today, it's a really long time, and for a number of reasons. First of all, digital innovation. It's impressive how 1 year can change everything. Hopefully, and that's my belief, digital tools in all fields and all ways are gonna actually allowing our work to become more sustainable. That's something that I am really I truly believe, and I hope as well. The other thing is that is the unpredictable effects and application of all technologies. So I'm sure that all the NFT world are gonna actually create completely new creative and a creative expression and fields, and totally new fields as well. Not only creative, but perhaps also scientific or of course technological as well. The other thing is that we are, as human beings, we are going in our path is to become more and more virtual, or to coexist in a virtual with the virtual world. And at the moment, there is a sort of separation between the real and the digital. There is a relation, of course. There is an interaction, and but they are quite separated. And I think that new technologies are gonna push for a coexistence between the virtual and digital and the real and physical spaces. So probably in 5 years we are not gonna be able to separate these two environments. It's gonna be tough to say what is digital and what is physical, because probably we're gonna coexist. The two parts of the world, the digital and the physical, are gonna be completely integrated. Hopefully, in a more sustainable way, not only from a ecological point of view, but also from a social point of view, because as you were saying, we are gonna have NFT in general, and the internet are gonna give the possibility to express to the people to express themselves in a more articulated, in a more free way, and freedom of expression is really important, is fundamental.
I think to add to that, Niccolo, one of the incredible things that I've seen in my interviews with some of the artists that are part of the MetaArt Club is artists from, for example, Africa, talking about how, you know, their projects, because of the blockchain, were able to provide more than just charitable giving back, but that it was built into the actual smart contract of the work. And there's no, and that changes fundamentally the whole dialogue between artists and their audiences and their communities in a way that is perhaps unprecedented. So I think that's one really powerful example of maybe an early you know, powerful thing that we can see is a direct consequence of NFTs, and it's happening already.
Yeah, and that's like a perfect example to connect to what we were saying about decadence and Renaissance before, because both cultural paradigm, the decadent and the Renaissance one, are based on the individuality. Individuality, not in the egoistic way, but in the possibility to contribute and express in an individual way, in a sort of freedom that is starting from the, let's say, from bottom up. And in a moment a society starts decaying, and a new society that generally is new in a better sense start growing, all the rules start, all the systems start breaking down, and then the new system start emerging and assembling through the expression of new individualities. And I think that, as you were saying, the new digital tools can allow individual free expression, and that's an unprecedented possibility.
Niccolo Casas, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a real privilege to speak to you and to really have a chance to interact with you on this platform. And I really hope to have an opportunity at one point to do it again over a podcast, perhaps.
Of course.
We are so excited to have you as part of our collective of artists for the MetaArt Club. So thank you, Niccolo.
Thank you very much. And of course, let's talk pretty soon.
Brilliant. Okay. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.